By 2 in the morning, Zoe Tran could tell the shape of a disaster by sound alone. The clipped panic of someone trying not to scream, the wet rattle of a chest filling, the hollow silence that followed when a monitor flattened and nobody in a trauma bay had another trick left. Tonight, the ER at Harborview was all noise and blood and fluorescent exhaustion. Zoe moved through it like she always did, fast, precise, too tired to notice she was tired. Start lines, push meds, count compressions, clamp fear behind her teeth until shift change. She had learned to function on fragments. 20 minutes of sleep in a call room, coffee that tasted like iodine, and a spreadsheet on her phone with columns named Rent, Dialysis, Lawyer, and Don't Look. The last one held the numbers she couldn't pay yet. $186,440 in specialist consults and procedures for Lena's kidneys, plus another $74,000 in private debt that had appeared after Lena's ex-boyfriend disappeared and 3 men with Varga tattoos started visiting their apartment stairwell. Lena was 16, brilliant, stubborn, and born with a body that betrayed her one organ at a time. Their parents had died in a pileup on I-5 when Lena was 10 and Zoe was 22. Since then, Zoe had become sister, guardian, provider, and, when needed, liar. It was amazing how many forms asked for mother's maiden name when your mother had been buried for 6 years. By 5:30, Zoe peeled off her gloves and checked her phone. 7 missed calls from an unknown number. 1 text from Lena, done with school, going to dialysis. Don't freak. Zoe called immediately. No answer. She called the dialysis center. She left an hour ago, the receptionist said. The unknown number rang again. Zoe answered on the way to the parking garage. If this is another debt collector, I already told... A male voice, smooth and bored, cut in. Ms. Tran, this is Pavel. You owe Mr. Emilio Varga money through your sister's account. We have been patient. It isn't her account, Zoe snapped. Her ex forged her signature. Forgery is a legal word. Debt is a practical one. A pause. You have till tonight. Then he hung up. Seattle rain came down in thin, mean sheets as Zoe drove to their apartment in Rainier Valley. No Lena. Her backpack was on the sofa, zipper open, physics notes spilling out. Zoe checked the bathroom, the alley, the laundromat next door. Nothing. At 6:22, her phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. South Harbor Parkade. Level 3. Come alone. She didn't call police. Not yet. She'd already tried once 2 weeks ago after someone left a dead rat in their mailbox with a pink hospital wristband around its neck. The responding officer had taken notes without looking up and asked whether Lena had a history of poor choices. 40 minutes later, that same officer's body cam clip was gone from the system. Zoe drove to South Harbor with her pulse hammering in her gums. Level 3 smelled like oil and salt, the port close enough that container cranes blinked red through the gaps in concrete. Lena sat on the ground beside a pillar, one arm clutched to her chest, face streaked with tears and rain. Even from several yards away, Zoe could see the wrong angle at Lena's wrist and the fast, bright swelling. 2 men stood over her. One wore a leather jacket and had Varga inked along his knuckles. The other filmed on his phone. Zoe. Lena gasped when she saw her. Zoe moved toward her. Knuckles blocked her chest. No touching yet, the leather jacket man said. Payment meeting. She's a minor, Zoe said. You touch her again and I'll... He smiled without warmth and glanced at Lena's wrist. You're late. Zoe lunged. The second man caught her by the throat and shoved her back against a pillar hard enough to make sparks burst at the edge of her vision. Careful, he murmured. You don't pay in money, you pay in labor. Your port is very busy at night. Girls disappear there all the time. Containers don't ask age. Zoe froze. She had seen those girls in her ER bays. No documents, no language, bruises patterned like fingerprints. Leather jacket crouched by Lena and held up a folded paper. Debt now includes collection fees, midnight, or she goes to work. He tucked the paper into Zoe's scrub pocket, and they walked away, unhurried, boots echoing off concrete like a countdown. Zoe dropped to her knees by Lena, swallowing panic into triage. Obvious deformity at distal radius, swelling immediate, skin intact, pulse present. "Hey, look at me," she said, voice shaking only once. "Breathe. We're going to get this splinted." Lena cried through clenched teeth. "I'm sorry. I thought I could fix it. Dario said it was just a marker account. No interest, quick flip, I swear." "Don't." Zoe tore a cardboard box from a nearby bin, made an improvised splint with tape from her trunk, and wrapped Lena's wrist while rain hissed through the open side of the garage. "You don't owe me apologies. You owe me surviving." At urgent care, an hour later, while Lena was sedated and x-rayed, a woman in an expensive charcoal coat sat beside Zoe in the waiting room and handed her a white envelope embossed with a black wolf crest. "Mr. Adrian Volkov has an offer," she said. "Time sensitive." Zoe stared at her. "The shipping billionaire?" "The same. I don't do fundraisers. This is not charitable." The woman's expression did not move. "Marriage contract? Legal term, 12 months. Renewable by mutual consent. In exchange, Varga debt erased tonight. Full armed security for your sister, and direct placement with Dr. Elias Morgan at Pacific Transplant." Dr. Morgan was the specialist Zoe had been trying to reach for 9 months. No openings, no exceptions. Zoe laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "He wants a wife off Craigslist?" "Mr. Volkov requires a spouse for strategic stability and inheritance compliance. You require immediate leverage and medical access. This is efficient." "What's the catch?" The woman held Zoe's gaze. "You will be Mrs. Volkov in public and private residence. You will follow security protocol. You will ask no questions you cannot survive," Hearing answered. Zoe thought of Lena on a concrete floor, wrist bent wrong. Thought of the spreadsheet she couldn't beat. Thought of girls in containers. "Tonight?" she asked. "Courthouse at 8. When Lena woke, pale and nauseous, Zoe told her they were going somewhere safe. She didn't tell her she was trading her name for it. The courthouse wedding took 11 minutes. No flowers, no family, no music. Just rain on the windows, a sleepy clerk with a state seal pin, 2 witnesses from Volkov Security, and Adrian Volkov standing across from her in a black coat, so perfectly cut, it looked armored. He was taller than she expected, early 30s, stillness like a threat. His face gave away nothing except focus. His eyes were the kind that measured exits while you were still choosing words. "Do you understand the terms, Ms. Tran?" the clerk asked. "Yes," Zoe said. Adrian's voice was low and unadorned. "I do." Rings were optional under the contract. He still slid one onto her finger, platinum, cool as surgical steel. When it was done, the clerk smiled weakly. "Congratulations." No one clapped. Outside, flashbulbs popped from across the street where someone had leaked the filing. Zoe flinched. Adrian placed a hand lightly at her back and moved her into a waiting SUV before a single question could land. Lena was already inside, her wrist casted, eyes wide. 2 armed women in plain black sat beside her. "Who are they?" Lena whispered. "Your security detail," Adrian said. Lena looked at Zoe like she was seeing a stranger. You married him? Zoe met her eyes. I got you an appointment with Dr. Morgan. Lena's mouth trembled, then shut hard. She nodded once and looked out the window all the way to Volkov Tower. By midnight, Zoe stood barefoot on a heated stone in Adrian's penthouse, 42 floors above Elliott Bay. Glass walls reflected the city in fragments. Neon, fairy lights, cranes, distant sirens. Adrian poured 2 fingers of vodka and didn't drink it. You need rules, he said. Zoe folded her arms against the cold she suddenly felt. I already signed 72 pages of rules. These are the only ones that matter. He set the glass down untouched. Never lie to me. Never leave this residence without security. Never trust anyone wearing my crest except me. She gave him a brittle smile. Comforting. It will keep you alive. Will it keep Lena alive? A pause. If you follow protocol, yes. She wanted to ask what he got from this beyond paperwork. Wanted to ask why a man like him needed a contract bride and why his people looked at her as if she were both guest and bomb. But she heard the warning in the woman's voice at urgent care. Ask no questions, you can't survive. Adrian crossed to a lacquered box on the console and opened it. Inside lay a jade pendant, oval and veined dark green, on a thin gold chain. Traditional gift, he said, from my house to its bride. He stepped behind her before she could refuse and fastened it at the base of her throat. His fingers were warm, steady. Keep it on. That's another rule? Yes. At 5:17 a.m., security alarms went off in 3 short bursts. Zoe jerked awake in a bedroom she didn't remember falling asleep in. Outside the door came running footsteps, clipped Russian, the metallic click of rifles changing hands. She opened the door. A guard blocked her immediately. Back inside, Mrs. Volkov. What happened? Incident at Marina. 3 words later, Adrian appeared at the far end of the hall, fully dressed, expression carved from ice. Bring her, he told the guard. Volkov Marina was cordoned by the time they arrived. Blue police lights spun across wet docks and the hulls of million-dollar yachts. Uniforms clustered near Berth C. A homicide van idled with its rear doors open. Zoe smelled brine, diesel, and blood before she saw anything. Then a tarp lifted in the wind and she saw boots. Another tarp, another body. A third farther down near the fuel station. A detective with tired eyes strode toward Adrian. Mr. Volkov, you should not be here. Adrian didn't look away from the scene. It's my property. 3 dead men on your property. The detective flicked a glance at Zoe and recognized her with a tiny, ugly spark. Mrs. Volkov, hell of a wedding night. Who are they? Zoe asked, voice thin. The detective seemed pleased to answer. Nikolai Petrenko, your husband's cousin. He nodded toward the second tarp. Maxim Max Ilyev, Varga debt collector. A beat. And Detective Hal Brenner, Seattle homicide, off duty. Very dirty, if rumors are true. Zoe's stomach dropped. Brenner, the officer who dismissed her complaint, extorting both sides if whispers were true in the ER lot. All executed, the detective continued. 1 shot each. Professional. Dumped where access is restricted. Means insider. He let the word hang in the rain between them. Forensics techs moved past carrying evidence bags. One tech whispered to another, eyes cutting toward Zoe. She heard the words anyway. New bride, shawl. The detective turned back, savoring this now. Interesting thing. Security footage got wiped from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Clean scrub, except 1 frame we recovered from a backup cache. He pulled out his phone, tapped, and held up the image. Grainy, time-stamped, rain-fogged, and unmistakable. A a sliver of white embroidered fabric near Dock 7. The shawl Zoe had borrowed from Volkov's stylist at the courthouse, now draped over her shoulders under her coat. "I never came here," she said. "Sure," he said. Adrian stepped closer, voice so quiet it changed the air. "Detective, unless you have probable cause to detain my wife, you will direct all questions through counsel." The detective smirked. Counsel can't stop tabloids. As if on cue, phones started pinging around them. One officer muttered, "Jesus, it's already out." Headlines began to spread in real time. "Billionaire's bride linked to triple dock murder." Or nurse or black widow. Zoe's pulse thudded in her ears. She reached into her coat for her phone and found one she didn't recognize in the pocket. Cheap black plastic, burner model, no case. It vibrated. Unknown video file. No sender. Her hands went numb. She opened it. The camera shook, then steadied on a concrete room lit by one bare bulb. Lena sat in a metal chair, shoulders rigid, her cast hidden beneath an oversized hoodie sleeve. No blood, no obvious marks, just terror in her eyes as she stared into the lens. Somewhere off camera, a door clicked shut. A distorted voice spoke over the recording, almost cheerful. "Smile for cameras, Mrs. Volkov. Play the loving bride. One wrong move, one truth to police, and your sister is next on the dock." The video ended. For a second, the marina lights blurred and tilted. Zoe locked her knees before she could collapse. Adrian saw her face change. "What is it?" She looked at him, at the cops, at the tarps snapping in the wind, and understood with cold clarity that the wedding had not ended her nightmare. It had only moved it into a richer zip code with better tailoring. If she told the police now, Lena died. If she stayed silent, she became the perfect suspect. And somewhere in the machinery of Volkov and Varga, someone had planned all of it before she ever said "I do." "Mrs. Volkov?" the homicide detective said, watching her face. "You look pale. Need a medic?" Zoe locked her phone and slid it back into her coat before her fingers could shake. "I'm fine." "Good. We'll need a full statement." Adrian answered for her. "Through counsel." The detective's mouth twitched. Convenient. Adrian didn't blink. Necessary. He turned, hand firm at Zoe's elbow, and walked her off the dock past uniforms, crime scene tape, and cameras already climbing the fence line for a better shot. Zoe kept her expression blank because the voice on the video had been clear. "Keep smiling as the new bride." By the time they reached the SUV, hashtags were multiplying across every screen in sight. Hashtag Black Widow Bride, hashtag Volkov Murders, hashtag Nurse Mafia Queen. Inside the vehicle, Adrian tapped the privacy panel up. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Zoe forced herself to meet his eyes. Rule 1, never lie to him. Rule 1 had not accounted for Lena tied to a chair. "Just a spam video," she said. "Sick joke." His gaze stayed on her one beat too long, like he could hear the arrhythmia in her voice. Then he looked away, jaw tightening. You don't check unknown devices alone again. When they reached Volkov Tower, the lobby was already a bunker. Extra guards, facial scans, weapons visible. Zoe stepped out and asked the first question that mattered. "Where is Lena?" A woman from security checked an earpiece. "Suite 39B, ma'am. 2 guards posted." Zoe took the private elevator and ran anyway. The suite door was unlocked. Bed untouched, bathroom empty, window sealed shut. The 2 posted guards were dead in the adjoining service corridor, one with his throat cut, one with a bullet under the chin. Zoe stopped breathing. Adrian arrived seconds later with 3 men behind him. He took in the bodies, then the room, then Zoe's face. Lock this floor down, he snapped in Russian. Nobody in or out. I want every camera from midnight. A man in a dark suit appeared from the elevator, no rush in him at all. Mid-30s, immaculate tie, silver at one temple, eyes polite and unreadable. Matteo Rusk, he said, offering Zoe the smallest nod. I advise the family. I'm very sorry for this chaos. Zoe stared at him. He looked like a diplomat. He stood like someone used to giving orders in places where blood still dried on tile. Matteo glanced at the dead guards as if they were an accounting error. Media already has the doc story. We should move Mrs. Volkov to the Mercer estate immediately. Find Lena first, Zoe said. We are, Matteo said. But panic helps whoever took her. Adrian's voice dropped to steel. Get out, Matteo. Matteo inclined his head and stepped back, but not before giving Zoe a look that felt almost sympathetic. For now, please do exactly what security asks. Family stability depends on it. Mercer Estate sat behind iron gates and cedar hedges, all old money architecture and new money surveillance. The house was beautiful in the way a private clinic is beautiful. Expensive, soundproof, impossible to leave unnoticed. For the next 48 hours, Zoe lived inside a narrowing ring of rules. No phone except the one they issued. No windows without ballistic glass. No direct contact with police. 2 female guards outside her bedroom at all times. At 10 that morning, Adrian's PR team put her in cream silk and pearls and walked her down a staircase toward reporters gathered at the gate. Hold his arm, a stylist whispered. Smile once, not wide. Zoe smiled with numb lips while microphones screamed questions. Did you know one of the dead men was linked to your sister's debt? Were you at the marina at 3 a.m.? Is this marriage connected to organized crime? Adrian answered none of them. He simply guided her into a car, expression flat, and drove her to a transplant consult Lena was supposed to attend. Dr. Morgan met them in a private office and reviewed charts as if this were normal. Your sister misses this appointment. She falls to the bottom of my list, he said. Zoe nodded like she understood calendars in a world where people vanished between elevators. That night, when the house finally went quiet, she took apart what she could. Brenner's name had popped in internal hospital gossip for years. Dirty cop, side deals, missing evidence. Zoe still had access to old ER case notes and social work alerts through a colleague who owed her 3 favors and asked no questions. She used a locked guest room laptop, tunneled through hospital VPN, and started pulling records tied to Brenner's badge number. Patterns emerged by 2 a.m. Unidentified teens admitted with dehydration, sedation, rope abrasions. Discharged to county transport, then marked transferred to non-profit recovery facilities that had no real addresses. Ambulance IDs recurring on nights when Volkov and Varga cargo moved through Pier 19. Donor escort paperwork filed under charitable grants from St. Bridget Maritime Relief and Harbor Light Children's Trust. Both charities had clean websites, smiling kids, and board signatures. One signature appeared on each. Matteo Rusk, fiduciary liaison. Another appeared in smaller print under Volkov Foundation compliance. Nikolai Petrenko, dead at the dock. Zoe screenshot everything and hid copies in 3 places. At breakfast, Matteo appeared in the conservatory with espresso and a silk pocket square. You were awake late? He said pleasantly. Our cybersecurity team noticed unusual traffic. Zoe didn't look up from her tea. I couldn't sleep. Of course. He sat across from her. You're under pressure? But you are not an investigator, Mrs. Volkov. You are a symbol right now. If you start pulling at threads, people panic. Maybe panic is useful. His smile stayed in place, but cooled. Only if you survive it. Adrian can't protect you from every consequence. Neither can I. She met his gaze. Were those charities yours? They're legal structures. This city runs on legal structures. He set his cup down with precise care. Please stop digging. For family stability. When he left, Zoe realized her palms were damp. By evening, she had a second burner message. A photo of Lena's casted arm beside that day's newspaper. Alive. No text. Zoe started planning instead of waiting. She sent an anonymous tip through a hospital social worker's anti-trafficking channel about a warehouse near Terminal 46, citing incoming medical transfer vans and armed handlers. 30 minutes later, local news broke into programming. Multi-agency raid in Sodo. Several juveniles recovered. Footage flashed across the estate TV. Girls in blankets, faces blurred, one wearing an oversized gray hoodie and a bright white forearm cast. Stop, Zoe said, stepping closer. Rewind. The image froze for half a second. Lena's profile. No doubt. She spun toward the doorway. Get Adrian, now! Adrian came fast, read her face, saw the screen. He was already on his phone by the time she grabbed her coat. We're going to county, he said. Mateo blocked the hall before they reached the foyer. Absolutely not. It's a police scene. My sister is there, Zoe said. Then she'll be processed and released through proper channels. Adrian's eyes hardened. Move. Mateo held his ground one dangerous second, then stepped aside. If this turns public, we lose control of the narrative. Adrian didn't answer. They were 10 minutes from King County juvenile intake when Adrian's phone rang. He listened, face going blank in a way that was worse than anger. No, he said. Say that again. He hung up. Zoe could hear her own breathing. What? Lena was logged in at 1812, he said. At 1826, transfer order issued to move her for protective medical evaluation. Signed with Detective Hal Brenner's credentials. He's dead. Yes. Where did they take her? No arrival record anywhere. Zoe slammed her fist against the door, hard enough to bruise. They took her out of police custody in 14 minutes. Adrian said nothing. Back at the estate, thunder rolled over the lake. Zoe went to the one place she still understood. Evidence. She requested her old apartment key from security and, after a brutal argument, got escorted there by 2 armed women and 1 silent driver. Rainwater dripped through the building's busted gutter. Inside, the apartment looked untouched until she noticed the frame of Lena's bedroom mirror had been pried open and put back crooked. Zoe knelt and popped the frame free. Behind it, a folded sheet of graph paper, 1 memory card adapter, and a page torn from one of their father's old accounting notebooks. Her father's handwriting, tight and slanted. If they split the ledger, trust no badge, no crest. 3rd key rides in jade, not in account, on the body. L knows half, Z has half and doesn't know. Below it, a string of numbers their father used as puzzle check sums when they were kids. Zoe sat back on her heels, heart punching. Jade. Her fingers went to the pendant at her throat. Back at Mercer, she locked herself in the guest bathroom, braced the pendant under bright vanity light, and finally saw it. A hairline seam around the edge she'd missed before. Not decorative. Engineered. She slid a sterile lancet from her emergency kit under the seam and twisted. The stone face clicked loose. Inside sat a microdrive, no larger than her fingernail. For 10 seconds, she just stared at it. Then the door handle turned once, found locked, and Adrian's voice came through the wood. Zoe, open. She palmed the drive, opened the door, and stepped aside. Adrian entered alone, wet from rain, tie loosened, control fraying at the edges for the first time. He looked at the open pendant in her hand. Silence. "You knew," she said. "I suspected." "That this was a key? That your family had something people were killing for, yes." He exhaled once. "I did not know it was physically in the pendant. You put it on me at the wedding. Because if Mateo's people searched the house, they would search safes, devices, walls, not your throat." Zoe laughed, harsh and disbelieving. "So I was a courier. You were protected by proximity. Don't dress it up." His jaw flexed. "You think I arranged this? My cousin is dead. A homicide detective is dead. Varga's collector is dead. All three were preparing to sell information about someone above both our houses. They were executed before they could." "By Mateo. Maybe. I can't prove it." She held his gaze. "I lied to you at the marina." "I know." "There was a video. Lena tied to a chair. They told me if I talk to police, she dies." Something in his face shifted. Not surprise, something darker, personal. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because everyone with your crest tells me to stay quiet. Because your consigliere keeps saying family stability like it's holy scripture. Because I don't know who in your house is buying children under the label of medical transport." Adrian went very still. "Show me the drive." She didn't move. "If you run this alone," he said, voice low, "you die before sunrise. If I take it and shut you out, you'll never trust me again. Neither outcome gets Lena back." Thunder cracked outside. Close. Zoe opened her palm. The microdrive sat there like a tooth. Adrian didn't touch it. "Your father worked numbers for both Volkov and Varga in the port expansion years," he said. "He began keeping parallel ledgers when he realized shipments were not cargo. People. He hid names, politicians, detectives, customs officers, dockmasters, insurance on everyone. My father died in a traffic accident." Adrian's eyes held hers. "Your father's brakes were cut." She closed her fingers around the drive so hard it hurt. "Lena knew enough to steal attention," Adrian continued. "Debt, bad boyfriend, noise. She made herself look reckless so whoever was hunting the key would focus on her mistakes, not your father's files." Zoe swallowed against nausea and admiration and rage all at once. 16 years old, and she'd been playing decoy in a war. "What now?" Zoe asked. Adrian finally looked tired. "Now we bait the buyer. We leak that the ledger is complete and for sale. Whoever ordered those dock murders will move to contain it." "An auction?" "Yes." She nodded once, decision landing like a blade. "Then we do it my way too." His brow tightened. "Meaning?" "We don't hand it to Volkov. We don't hand it to Varga. We build one copy for your trap. And when Lena is in my hands, the real drive goes to Federal Task Force." A long beat. Rain hammered the windows. "Choosing the feds burns every bridge," Adrian said. "Good," Zoe said. "I'm done living on bridges owned by men with guns." For the first time since the courthouse, the edge of something like respect crossed his face. "Then we stop pretending this is a marriage contract," he said. "It's an alliance." Zoe snapped the jade shell back over the hidden slot and clasped the pendant around her neck again. "Find me a secure room," she said, "and every file Brenner ever touched. If Mateo wants stability, he can watch me destabilize his entire business model." Within 20 minutes, Zoe was in what Volkov security called a secure room, and what anyone honest would call a bunker. No windows, reinforced door, 2 independent power lines, a steel table bolted to the floor with 3 encrypted laptops, and a signal jammer humming like a trapped hornet. Adrian stood at the far end with his phone to his ear, issuing orders in clipped Russian while a tech specialist mirrored drives from Brenner's old evidence cloud onto an offline server. Zoe sat, flexed her fingers once, and got to work. Brenner's files were filth wrapped in procedure, sealed warrants that never reached court, custody transfer forms with impossible timestamps, lists of medical escorts tied to shipping manifests marked as refrigerated tissue transport. She cross-referenced VIN numbers from ambulance logs against Portgate scans, then against St. Bridget grants, then against Harbor Light Board minutes. Every road curved back to the same cluster of names: Mateo Rusk, Emilio Varga, Councilman DeLuca, Captain J. Rosenthal, Port Authority Police, and a shell carrier flagged in Cyprus that docked twice a month under humanitarian exemption. She built the decoy ledger like she used to build a trauma handoff. Clean, fast, no wasted words. Enough truth to bait, enough omissions to survive if compromised. At 1:13 a.m., one of Adrian's cybermen swore under his breath. "Boss, we have a problem." Adrian moved to his station. "Say it." Foundation accounts were locked 10 minutes ago. Multi-signature override from Council Channel. He pulled up the authorization chain. Signed with your digital token and secondary key from Consigliere office. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Zoe saw his right hand close once into a fist. "I didn't authorize it." "No," the text said. "But everyone downstream believes you did. Payroll, security retainers, off-book operations, all frozen pending review." Zoe looked up from the ledger. "Mateo just took your oxygen." Adrian nodded once, and blamed me for holding my breath. His phone rang almost immediately. He listened in silence, then put it on speaker. A panicked male voice flooded the room. "It's Semyon at North Yard. Men are refusing shift. They say Mateo announced emergency stewardship." Half the captains switched crest colors. "They're tearing your flag down right now." "Hold position," Adrian said. "Can't. Varga trucks are moving through Gate 4 with port escort. They have transfer papers." Transfer papers? Zoe felt ice in her spine. For what? No one answered fast enough. She pulled another window open and scanned live customs updates. There, new filing, emergency juvenile medical extraction, destination, Vladivostok by way of private carrier. Patient name redacted, authorizing physician E. Morgan. "That's fake," Zoe said sharply. "Morgan would never—" Her own phone, the clean one Adrian had issued, lit up with an incoming encrypted clip. No sender. She played it. Lena in the same chair, same bare bulb, but this time she had an IV taped to her arm. Her face was waxy with sedation, pupils slow. A digital clock sat on a crate beside her, counting down from 11:59:48. The distorted voice returned. 12 hours, Mrs. Volkov. Deliver complete ledger at tonight's Harbor Light charity event. And your sister gets a hospital, not a hull. Fail, and she ships as inventory. The clip ended. Immediately, another message arrived. This one text only. No police. No federal contact. We see everything. Zoe stood too fast. Her chair skidded. They're moving her out tonight. Adrian was already on 3 lines at once. Get Dr. Morgan physically verified. Now. Lock every outbound lane at private terminals. I want Rosenthal located. The cybertech looked pale. Sir, there's more. Someone pushed a packet to local media and SPD internal. It's a curated dump. Mrs. Volkov's hospital logins, Brenner case files, financial transfer screenshots. Cut to imply she accessed evidence before the murders and received payments from shell charities. Zoe stared at him. That's fabricated. Partially, he said helplessly. Partially real. Real enough for probable cause. As if summoned, Pounding boots hit the corridor outside. A guard's voice crackled over comms. Legal team at checkpoint says homicide got a warrant request for Mrs. Volkov. They're pushing for immediate detention. Everything Zoe had built in the last day, data, leverage, a path to Lena, collapsed into a single terrifying equation. Matteo had the counsel, the money, the cops, and now the public story. If he succeeded, Lena vanished overseas under a medical pretext, and Zoe went to jail wearing the face of a murderer. Adrian would lose command, maybe his life. The ledger would disappear back into men who turned children into line items. Adrian cut the line and looked at her. He's forcing the timetable. We move now. They moved in rain and blue light. Adrian chose 6 loyal men, 2 unmarked SUVs, no Volkov crest. Zoe rode in the middle vehicle with a tablet on her knees, tracking the fake medical transfer permit as it pinged through port checkpoints. The convoy they were chasing had official escort, rolling through lanes that should have been blocked. Signals heading to Pier 19, Zoe said. Same corridor as those ambulance manifests. Adrian spoke into comms. Team 1 flanks south fence. Team 2 with me. No sirens, no warning. As they turned onto Alaskan Way, Zoe's hospital colleague Mara called from a blocked number, whispering fast. I got your message. I found intake anomalies under Brenner and Rosenthal. Someone's purging records right now from county servers. Also, Zoe, listen. They flagged you as person of interest at dispatch. Don't come anywhere near. The line went dead. Mara? Zoe hit redial. Nothing. Adrian glanced at her. Who was that? Hospital contact. She was in county records when... A bloom of orange tore open the sky ahead. The lead SUV lifted off the pavement in a concussive roar, then slammed sideways into a barrier. Glass and metal rained across wet asphalt. Zoe screamed before she knew she had. Adrian's driver yanked hard. Their vehicle fishtailed, clipped a bollard, and spun to a stop facing the wrong direction. Gunfire cracked from the overpass. Out! A guard shouted. Adrian dragged Zoe down behind the engine block as rounds chewed sparks from the road. One of his men returned fire from a crouch. Another was already down, blood pumping through his sleeve. Zoe's body switched to muscle memory. She crawled to him under a hail of shattered glass, clamped a hand over the wound high near his shoulder and neck. Stay with me. Eyes on me. Convoy, he gasped. She looked up just long enough to see headlights. 3 black vans blowing past the chaos toward the docks, while everyone on the highway fought to survive the ambush. Gone, she whispered. Adrian heard it anyway. By the time port tactical units arrived, the vans had vanished into container lanes and false transponder echoes. The transfer signal Zoe had tracked split into 9 phantom routes, then winked out completely. Back at Mercer near dawn, blood dried under Zoe's fingernails in thin rust lines. 1 guard dead. 2 critical. Semyon missing after radio silence at North Yard. Mara still unreachable. And the worst piece. When Cyber ran integrity checks on their decoy file set, the drive image they'd prepared had been remotely corrupted during the ambush window. Only the physical microdrive is clean, the text said. No usable duplicate. Zoe sank onto the edge of the steel table. So we have 1 copy of everything and no way to test release without exposing it. Adrian stood across from her, coat dark with rain and someone else's blood. We still have the original. We still have a venue. Do we? She shot back. Your men are bleeding in the street. Matteo owns your accounts. Police are drafting my arrest. Lena's on a countdown, and we just lost the convoy. No one in the room argued, because none of it was false. When the others cleared to triage calls and perimeter checks, Zoe pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes and finally let herself shake. I can't do 12 more hours of this, she said hoarsely. I keep making choices, and every choice gets someone hurt. Adrian's voice softened, barely. That means your choices matter. It means I'm failing her. He didn't answer quickly. Maybe. So am I. For the first time since this began, neither of them had a tactical next step ready. The silence that followed was not strategy. It was fear. Adrian found himself in his father's study because he did not know where else to put the weight. The room smelled like leather, smoke that never quite left the wood, and old money that had purchased too many clean outcomes. Rain striped the windows. Down the hall, medics moved one of his men toward the private clinic entrance, wheels rattling over marble. He opened the bottom drawer of the desk and took out the photograph he hadn't touched in years. Anya, at 19, laughing at something outside the frame, dark hair blown across her mouth by harbor wind. His sister had once told him the port lights looked like constellations if you squinted. 2 months later, she'd been used as leverage in a debt dispute, hidden in a warehouse for 40 hours while men negotiated percentages. She survived the kidnapping, not what came after. Pills, then harder things, then a winter morning where no one got to her room in time. Adrian had been 21 and already learning to wear stillness like armor. He had promised over her body that no one would ever use his family that way again. Now he had married a woman into his war and watched her sister disappear through systems he was supposed to control. He pressed his thumb against the edge of Anya's photo until it bent. The door opened without a knock. Zoe stood there, stripped of silk and stage-managed composure, in black cargo pants borrowed from security and a sweatshirt with dried blood at the cuff. "I was looking for you," she said. Adrian set the photo face down. Too late. Her eyes flicked to it anyway. "Who is she?" Zoe asked gently. "My sister." He expected the question to end there. It didn't. What happened? He could have given the cold version. Overdose. Years ago. Irrelevant. Instead, he heard himself say, "She was collateral in a negotiation I thought I could contain." Zoe stayed in the doorway, giving him the dignity of distance. "Like Lena?" "Yes." The word came out ragged. He looked at his hands, surprised to find they were not steady. "Matteo taught me how to run numbers when I took over at 24. He taught me which judges could be bought and which had children in private schools. I thought that made him useful. I did not ask enough about what he was protecting because profits were clean and violence stayed offshore." He laughed once, bitter. "That is the lie men like me tell ourselves. Offshore." Zoe crossed the room and sat on the arm of the chair opposite him. "You're telling me this now because if tonight goes wrong, you should know I am not confused about what I've built." He met her eyes. "And because I am afraid." It cost him to say it. She could see that. "Afraid of dying?" she asked. "Afraid of surviving it again." Something in her expression cracked. Not pity, not exactly. Something harder and kinder. She reached out, not tentative, and covered his clenched fist with her hand. "We get her back," she said. "Then we burn the rest." He let his fingers uncurl beneath hers. "I don't know how to be forgiven, Zoe." "Good," she said. "Then don't practice speeches. Practice showing up." A knock cut through the room. 2 sharp hits, pause, 1 more. Security code for urgent. Adrian stood, mask back on, but thinner now. "Come in." The guard entered pale. "Sir, Emergency Council convened in the East Hall. Matteo is present with legal and armed escort. Says it cannot wait." The East Hall looked like a board meeting designed by undertakers. Long black table, city maps on digital screens, 12 council seats, 9 occupied. Matteo at the far end in a charcoal suit, cufflinks silver, expression mournful as a priest at a staged funeral. When Zoe entered beside Adrian, conversation died. Mateo rose first. "Thank you for coming. We have grave developments." Adrian didn't sit. "You froze my infrastructure and ambushed my convoy." Mateo spread his hands. "I didn't either. But your unilateral actions have destabilized all operations. 3 captains dead overnight. Law enforcement pressure extreme. We must protect the family." "By handing children to Varga under medical labels?" Zoe snapped. A few council heads turned sharply. Mateo's face did not move. "Mrs. Volkov is under understandable stress." He tapped a tablet. The wall screens changed to live news feeds. Zoe's face filled every channel. "Breaking. New evidence in Volkov Marina triple homicide." A grainy clip showed her entering a hospital records room, time-stamped hours before the dock murders. A cropped bank transfer linked Z-Tran to Harbor Light. A talking head announced that SPD had approved a warrant for questioning and was considering charges pending forensic review. Then Mateo played audio. It was Zoe's voice, perfectly mimicked, AI smoothed, but devastatingly believable. "Lena is leverage. Once the men are gone, no one can trace the dock route." Zoe went cold. "That is fake." "Perhaps," Mateo said softly. "Public opinion does not litigate technical nuance, nor do frightened investors." Adrian stepped forward. 2 of Mateo's escorts shifted, hands near jackets. "Sit down," Councilman DeLuca barked. "All of you." No one sat. Mateo slid a printed document across the table toward Adrian. "Emergency Stewardship Order. Temporary suspension of command authority pending internal review. Signed by 7 council members." "We need calm leadership tonight," Mateo said. "Not romance and revenge." Adrian didn't touch the paper. "What do you want?" At last, the polite mask thinned, and something real looked out through Mateo's eyes. "The jade pendant and complete ledger," he said. "Delivered personally by Mrs. Volkov to Harbor Light's charity gala, Dry Dock 17 at 2200. She arrives unarmed in public view. In exchange, her sister is released to Dr. Morgan's team alive." "Proof of life first," Zoe said. Mateo nodded to an aide, who handed her a phone already playing video. Lena lay on a narrow cot now, oxygen cannula taped under her nose, IV still running. A man in surgical gloves checked her pupil with a pen light, while the countdown clock read 7:42:11. A fresh voice, unmasked this time, spoke from off-camera. Male, educated, almost bored. "Creatinine rising. If we miss window, she's not transplantable." Zoe's knees almost gave. She held the phone like it might burn through her skin. Mateo watched her carefully. "You see the urgency?" Adrian's voice was lethal calm. If she is harmed," Mateo cut in. "The ledger dies with her, and federal prosecutors hang your wife with it." He looked around the table. "Gentlemen, this is now a salvage operation." Sirens wailed faintly outside the estate gates, growing louder. A guard burst into the hall. "SPD units at the outer perimeter with warrant packet for Mrs. Volkov. Media behind them." Mateo folded his hands. "Time, I'm afraid, has become very expensive." Zoe looked at Adrian. He looked back, and for once there was no control left to perform, only the raw fact of what sat in front of them. Surrender the drive into a trap, or lose Lena to a clock already running. Outside, red and blue light began to strobe across the hall windows like a pulse. Red and blue light strobed across the east hall windows like a pulse. Zoe set the phone with Lena's video on the table and heard her own voice, clear and steady, cut through the room. "I'll go to Dry Dock 17? Every head turned. Adrian's jaw tightened. "No." She didn't look at him yet. "You wanted bait? Mateo wants a stage. I'm giving him both." Mateo tilted his head, almost approving. Pragmatic, at last. Zoe faced him. My terms. Lena is delivered alive to Dr. Morgan on site before I hand over anything. I choose the transfer room. I choose who checks her vitals. Charming, Mateo said. You think this is a negotiation? No, Zoe said. I think you need the ledger, and I'm the only one who can authenticate it. Without me, it's numbers on a chip, and you know it. A murmur moved along the council table. Mateo noticed it too. He smiled thinly. Fine, you'll have your little medical theater. Zoe finally looked at Adrian. His expression said every violent argument he was swallowing. Trust me for 3 more hours, she said quietly. Then do whatever you want. He held her gaze, then gave one clipped nod. By 9:30, Harbor Lights Winter Benefactors Gala glittered across the abandoned shipyard like a lie. Dry Dock 17 had been transformed with chandeliers hung from steel trusses, black linen over rusted railings, and a string quartet playing beside a dry basin that once held cargo ships and now held men with hidden guns. Women in gowns stepped over old oil stains. Men in tuxedos laughed over champagne while bids opened on humanitarian corridors and medical supply routes. Zoe walked in on Adrian's arm, wearing silver satin, her jade pendant at her throat, and a smile so controlled her cheeks hurt. Inside her left ear, a tiny comm whispered static, then a woman's voice. Channel Live. This is Special Agent Naomi Reyes, Federal Task Force. We have your feed. Zoe kept walking. Copy. No lip movement. She'd learned in trauma rooms how to talk through her teeth. Reyes had come through Mara's anti-trafficking contact chain an hour earlier. No local cops, no leaks. One narrowband signal from Zoe's pendant mic straight to a federal van parked 3 blocks out, waiting for enough evidence to crash both syndicates at once. Adrian squeezed Zoe's fingers once as they reached the central platform. Mateo's left corridor, 2nd tier, he murmured. He brought private med team. No sign of Lena yet. Stall the floor, Zoe said. He released her and moved toward the bidding dais, where Volkov men, those still loyal, began quietly sealing exits under cover of serving staff rotations. Mateo appeared at Zoe's shoulder like perfume. Radiant, he said. The public adores a redemption arc. Show me my sister. You'll see her when we begin. He guided her toward a side hallway labeled Staff Only, away from cameras and applause. The noise of the gala dulled behind soundproof doors. Ahead, fluorescent lights buzzed over concrete. 2 armed men opened a utility room. Inside, a folding table, IV stand, portable monitor. One doctor Zoe recognized immediately. Dr. Elias Morgan, furious and white-knuckled, and on a cot beside him, Lena. Too thin, too pale, but alive. Zoe? Lena's voice was cracked, disoriented. Zoe crossed the room in 3 strides and took her face in both hands. Hey, I'm here. Lena's eyes filled. I'm sorry. I tried to. Don't. Not now. Zoe turned to Morgan. Status? Sedated repeatedly, he said through his teeth. Creatinine critical. She needs real hospital care within hours. Mateo leaned against the doorframe. Heartwarming. Authenticate the ledger. Zoe straightened slowly. I said transfer first. And I said urgency. He held out his hand. Drive. She touched the pendant but didn't remove it. Proof she walks out with me. For the first time, Mateo's patience cracked. You really think you're the center of this story? No, Zoe said. I think you kill loose ends. Something flickered in his eyes. Decision. He nodded to one guard. Step outside with Dr. Morgan. Morgan resisted. A gun pressed into his ribs changed his mind. As the guard turned, Zoe caught a glint in Mateo's hand. A capped syringe, large bore, half filled with air. She moved before he did. Mateo lunged, driving the syringe toward the IV port in her arm, where someone had clipped a fake event bracelet line moments earlier. Air embolism. Fast, silent, plausible. Zoe trapped his wrist with both hands, pivoted, and slammed it down against the metal IV pole. Bone crunched. Mateo hissed and twisted, trying to force the needle free. "You should have stayed decorative," he spat. "Occupational hazard," Zoe said. She drove her knee into his thigh, then chopped the radial nerve point with the edge of her hand. His fingers opened involuntarily. The syringe clattered away. He reached with his good hand for a pistol at his back. Zoe jammed her forearm into his throat, pinned him to the wall, and ripped a second syringe from his inner jacket pocket, pre-filled, unlabeled, clear. "You came prepared," she said. His grin returned, feral now. "Do it, nurse. Guess wrong." Zoe held the barrel to the light. No viscosity, no color. She flicked it, watched bead behavior, smelled the hub, faint, bitter note, benzyl alcohol. "Midazolam," she said. Mateo's pupils widened a fraction. Confirmation. She plunged it into his neck before he could bite her hand. He slammed her once against the wall, then his muscles began to fold. She rode him down, breathing hard, and snatched the pendant mic loose, pressing it to his mouth. "Talk," she said. He laughed, sluggish. "To who?" "To everyone." She thumbed the pendant switch. Across the gala floor, Adrian's AV tech rerouted charity presentation audio to the room feed exactly as planned. Mateo's voice burst through hidden speakers beneath the string quartet. On the dance floor, glasses froze mid-air. Zoe held Mateo by the collar. "Who ordered the Marina murders?" He clenched his jaw. She pressed 2 fingers into the shattered wrist he favored. Pain cut through sedation. He gasped. "Who ordered them?" "I did," he hissed. "Petrenko sold roots. Brenner sold badges. Ilyev sold girls twice. Dead men keep cleaner books." Murmurs turned to shouts outside. "Who framed me?" "You were convenient," he slurred. "Poor nurse, sick sister, desperate bride. Everyone believes desperation." "Who runs the medical transport pipeline?" "Harbor Light, St. Bridget, Varga Docks, Volkov Manifests." His head lolled, then snapped up with spite. "And half your city council eats from it." Zoe leaned closer. "Where's the outbound shipment tonight?" He smiled through blood. "Container lane C9, reefer unit with fake renal tags. Happy now?" In Zoe's ear, Reyes's voice sharpened. "We have enough. Moving." Gunfire exploded from the gala floor before she could stand. Screams ripped through dry dock 17. Guests dropped behind tables. Crystals shattered. Men in tuxedos pulled weapons from tailored jackets and fired into the catwalk lights. Adrian hit the corridor at a run with 2 bodyguards and saw Zoe dragging Lena's cot toward the door. "C9, Zoe shouted. "Reefer container." He keyed comms. "Team 1 to lane C9 now. Extract live female with Dr. Morgan. Federal units inbound." A laugh boomed from the far end of the hall. Emilio Vargas stepped through smoke in a black overcoat, pistol in each hand, 6 gunmen behind him. "So much drama for accountants and nurses," Emilio said. His gaze landed on Mateo slumped against the wall. "You incompetent snake." Emilio raised a gun toward Mateo's head. Zoe shoved Mateo aside on instinct. The shot blew concrete from the wall. Emilio swung toward her instead. "Fine. I kill the bride myself." Adrian moved between them. The first bullet hit him high in the chest, just below the clavicle. He staggered but stayed up, shoving Zoe and Lena's cot behind an overturned cart. Go, he barked. Zoe pressed both hands to his wound automatically. Blood pumped hot between her fingers. Through and through? She shouted over gunfire. He coughed. Does it matter? Yes. A second round cracked past, close enough to shear hair from Zoe's temple. Adrian fired one-handed from behind the cart, dropping one of Emilio's men. Mateo, half sedated, crawled toward a fallen pistol. Zoe saw it, kicked it away, and grabbed the discarded air syringe from the floor. She jammed it into the central line port of a nearby prop IV bag, overpressurized it until plastic burst with a loud pop like a small gunshot. Every head flinched. In that split second, she yanked the fire suppression lever. Foam and chemical mist blasted from ceiling nozzles, turning the corridor into white chaos. Visibility dropped to nothing. Left wall, she shouted, hauling Lena's cot by feel. Dr. Morgan appeared through the haze, coughing, and took the other end. Behind them, Emilio roared orders in Spanish and Russian both. Then a new sound rolled in. Armored engines shouted federal commands, flashbangs detonating on the gala floor. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Reyes's team hit from 3 entrances at once. Zoe saw silhouettes through foam. Emilio firing blind, then going down under 2 agents and a baton strike. Mateo tried to stand, slipped, and was pinned face down with cuffs ratcheting over his broken wrist while he screamed legal threats. Adrian sagged against the wall, gray-faced. Zoe dropped beside him. Stay with me. Eyes. He looked at her, stubborn even now. Did you keep smiling? She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Shut up. She tore a tablecloth into pressure dressings, packed the wound, and yelled for a medic. Reyes herself skidded to her knees opposite Zoe. Agent Naomi Reyes, she said, breathless. We have Lena in extraction. We need the ledger now, Ms. Tran. Across the foam-choked corridor, Volkov men still standing looked at Zoe. So did the few Varga lieutenants not yet cuffed, all of them waiting to see who she fed. Zoe touched the jade pendant, felt the micro-drive inside, and knew this was the only moment that mattered. She unclasped it and placed it in Reyes's gloved palm. Not Volkov, not Varga, Zoe said. Chain of custody starts now. Reyes closed her fist around it. Received. Adrian watched her do it, blood on his teeth, and gave the smallest nod. Sirens swallowed the night. King County Medical Center smelled like antiseptic and burned coffee at 3 in the morning, exactly like every hospital where bad nights ended and worse mornings began. Zoe stood outside Trauma 2 in paper scrubs streaked with someone else's blood, while surgeons worked on Adrian behind swinging doors. Through the glass, she caught flashes. Suction line, chest tube kit, gloved hands moving fast. Down the hall, federal marshals guarded a curtained room where Lena slept under real monitors this time. Dr. Morgan charting at her bedside and refusing to leave. Agent Reyes approached with a tablet and 2 coffees. She handed Zoe one without asking. We got C9, Reyes said. 3 minors alive. 2 critical. Your sister would have been on the outbound manifest in 40 minutes. Zoe gripped the cup until it shook. Mara? Reyes nodded. Protective custody. She's alive. She pushed enough back-end logs to corroborate your timeline before they tried to scrub county servers. Relief hit like vertigo. What about Mateo? Zoe asked. Complaining about his wrist and invoking 6 attorneys. Also recorded confessing to triple homicide, trafficking conspiracy, evidence tampering, witness kidnapping. Reyes allowed herself a thin smile. He can monologue in federal court. Emilio? Alive, furious, in cuffs. Zoe looked toward Lena's room, then back at Trauma 2. And Adrian? Reyes followed her gaze. He cooperated tonight. That buys him a different conversation, not a free pass. Good, Zoe said. No free passes. Reyes studied her for a moment. You understand what happens next. Grand jury, testimony, cross-examination that tries to make you look complicit, unstable, opportunistic. Zoe let out a long breath. I was all three at different points. That honesty will either save you or destroy you. Then I'll use it first. A surgeon pushed through the doors, mask down. Family for Mr. Volkov? Zoe stepped forward before she could think about the word. Here. Bullet missed the heart and major vessels by luck and stubborn anatomy. He'll keep the lung if he behaves, which he won't. We got him stable. The corridor tilted back into place. When she was finally allowed into recovery, Adrian lay pale against white sheets, chest bandaged, oxygen cannula in place. His eyes opened as she sat. You look terrible, he murmured. You got shot in couture, Zoe said. Don't critique. His mouth twitched, then sobered. Lena? Alive. Morgan says we still have a transplant path. He closed his eyes briefly in gratitude or pain. Mateo? Cuffed, confessed, broadcast. He exhaled. Good. Zoe leaned back, exhaustion crashing over her all at once. I gave Reyes the real drive. I know. He looked at her. Thank you. For what? For ending it where I couldn't. Outside the room, dawn bled gray through hospital windows. Not peace yet. But not captivity either. 6 weeks later, rain tapped softly on the glass roof of the federal courthouse annex, while Zoe sat at a witness table and told 12 strangers exactly how fear had made her lie, then fight, then choose. She identified Mateo's voice on the recording. She explained the air syringe technique in plain language until jurors flinched. She named Brenner, Rosenthal, DeLuca, Shell Charities, transport manifests. She didn't spare herself. By the time she stepped outside, cameras were waiting again. But this time the shouted words were different. Ms. Tran, do you feel vindicated? Is it true your testimony triggered additional indictments? Do you still consider yourself Mrs. Volkov? She ignored all of it and got into the black sedan where Adrian waited in a suit that hid a healing scar and the federal monitor bracelet at his ankle. For a minute, neither spoke. Then he said, when they asked if you loved me, you said, that's not why I testified. Zoe stared out at the wet city. Did you want me to perform romance on the courthouse steps? No. He swallowed. I wanted to know if it's true in private, too. She turned to him. The old Adrian would have made that sound like leverage. This one sounded almost afraid. In private, she said carefully. I love the man who got shot standing in front of me. I do not love the empire that made that necessary. He looked down at his hands. I don't know how to separate them fast enough. Then start slow and real. That night, they went to the penthouse rooftop where it had all begun. Glass, wind, city lights over Elliott Bay. But everything was rearranged. No press, no counsel, just 2 witnesses. Lena in a knit cap and oversized coat, transplant scar hidden under her collarbone, and Dr. Morgan with his perpetual scowl softened by relief. A small firebowl burned between Zoe and Adrian. On a silver tray beside it lay their original marriage contract, 72 pages, tabs and signatures and clauses about obedience and optics. Adrian held the top page. His voice was rough, unpracticed. I married you to solve a problem, he said. Then you became the only person in the room telling me the truth when it cost you everything. I don't deserve what you gave me. I am still asking for it. Zoe felt the wind lift her hair. I married you to save Lena. I stayed because every time I expected you to choose power, you kept choosing people. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but for real." He gave a short, broken laugh. "I am very bad at speeches." "Good," Zoe said. "Be specific." He met her eyes, and this time he didn't hide. "I love you," Adrian said, the words plain and heavy. "Not because you are useful or brave or a symbol. I love you because when I am with you, I am not performing control. I'm just a man trying to be better than what raised him. If you want out, I will sign anything. If you stay, I will spend the rest of my life earning it." Zoe's throat tightened. She took the contract, tore it cleanly in half, then in quarters, and fed the pieces to the fire bowl one by one. "No more terms," she said. "No more cages disguised as protection." He nodded. "No more." Lena stepped forward with 2 simple bands, silver, unadorned. "Can we do this before I cry in public?" she said thickly. They exchanged rings again, no clerk, no cameras. Just rain-scented air and 4 witnesses, and the sound of traffic below like distant surf. When Adrian kissed her, it was not ownership and not strategy. It was a promise with teeth. The bodyguards on the stairwell, by unspoken agreement, took 1 step back. Spring came late and bright. On a Wednesday morning, Zoe stood in a renovated brick building near Pioneer Square, under a new sign that read, "Harbor House Survivor Fund." Inside, the old warehouse smelled of fresh paint, coffee, and donated furniture. A play corner in one room, legal aid desks in another. 2 exam bays with lockable med cabinets and no questions asked at intake. Mara, now officially program director and still incapable of not multitasking, thrust a clipboard at Zoe. "Exam room B needs you. New arrival, 17. Probable dehydration, won't speak to male staff." Zoe took the clipboard and moved. In exam B, a girl sat rigid on the table, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, bruises and healing shades along her forearm, fear in every muscle. Zoe kept her voice gentle, practical. "I'm Zoe. I used to work Harborview Trauma. Nobody here bills you, and nobody here sells your information. Can I check your pulse?" The girl nodded once. As Zoe reached for her wrist, a laugh floated in from the hallway. Lena's, lighter now, mixed with other volunteers stacking intake kits. Lena had completed transplant rehab, testified under a protected alias, and returned with a new last name and a stubborn plan to major in social work at UW. She wore it like armor and invitation both. Through the open office door, Zoe could also see Adrian at a conference table with 2 federal compliance officers and a stack of logistics contracts marked Volkov Legal Freight Division. No armed lieutenants, no consigliere. Just auditors, penalties, and a man learning to run ships that carried only cargo. His phone buzzed. He glanced up, met Zoe's eyes through the glass, and smiled. Small, real. By afternoon, news alerts chimed across staff phones. Mateo Rusk and Emilio Varga remanded on RICO and trafficking indictments. Rosenthal and DeLuca entered guilty pleas. The Marina triple homicide officially closed with corroborated confession and forensic match. The dead were still dead. Justice was not resurrection, but it was record. At closing, Zoe stepped outside onto the loading dock turned community garden. Raised beds, wet soil, early basil. Ferries moved across Elliott Bay under a sky the color of brushed steel. She could still tell the shape of disaster by sound alone. But now she could also tell the shape of repair. The rattle of pill bottles being sorted for free clinic shelves, Lena arguing with a printer that jammed every 3rd page, Adrian on speaker with a union rep instead of a fixer, a survivor in the lobby laughing for the first time that day. Inside, A monitor beeped steadily from exam B. Strong rhythm, no alarms. Zoe closed her eyes for one breath, then went back in.